What really excites me is when you see the entrepreneurs, and most of whom are small businesses, the innovation, the creativity, whether it's in Lagos.
Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia, is one of Africa's most important cities. It hosts the African Union, connects East Africa to the rest of the world, and acts as Ethiopia's political, economic, and diplomatic center. For decades, however, the city grew faster than its infrastructure could handle. Roads became congested, housing spread informally, and basic services struggled to keep pace with a rapidly rising population. Now that is changing. Over the past few years, Addis Ababa has entered a phase of intense urban transformation. Major roads are being rebuilt, new districts are rising, and large-scale projects are reshaping how the city looks and functions. These changes are part of a broader plan to modernize the capital and position it as a leading African hub for investment, aviation, tourism, and diplomacy. This transformation is ambitious, costly, and deeply consequential. It promises growth and global relevance, but it also raises serious questions about who benefits and who bears the cost. So, what is really happening in Addis Ababa? Let's find that out. Addis Ababa did not wake up one morning and decide to transform. For years, the city was simply trying to survive its own growth. Ethiopia's capital expanded rapidly as people moved in from across the country, chasing work, education, and opportunity. Neighborhoods stretched outward faster than planning could follow. Roads built decades ago were forced to carry traffic they were never designed for. Power cuts, flooding, congestion, and informal housing became normal parts of urban life. Yet this same city carried a strange contradiction. Addis Ababa was hosting presidents, diplomats, and continental summits while struggling with basic urban functionality. It was the political heart of Africa, home to the African Union, but its physical infrastructure told a very different story. Delegations arrived through busy roads. Investors navigated bottlenecks just to cross the city. The capital of a rising nation looked increasingly misaligned with its responsibilities. For a long time, the response was patchwork. A road was widened here. A flyover was built there. A drainage fix after each rainy season. But these solutions never addressed the core problem. Addis Ababa was no longer a city that could be fixed in pieces. It had become a system under strain, with transport, housing, utilities, and public space all pulling against each other. Behind closed doors, a realization began to take hold. If Addis Ababa was expected to function as Africa's diplomatic center, East Africa's aviation hub, and Ethiopia's economic engine, then incremental fixes were no longer enough. The city needed restructuring, not repair. It needed space, flow, visibility, and order, qualities global cities are designed around from the start. That realization coincided with a broader shift in Ethiopia's national thinking. Infrastructure was no longer seen as secondary to development. It was seen as the development itself. Railways, dams, airports, and industrial parks were already reshaping the country. The capital could not remain the weak link in that chain. What followed was not announced loudly. There was no single moment when Addis Ababa declared it was about to reinvent itself. Instead, residents noticed signs. Entire streets blocked off. Buildings marked for demolition. Construction is moving faster than explanations. At first, it felt disruptive, then unsettling, then undeniable. Addis Ababa was no longer adjusting to pressure. It was responding to a plan. This plan did not treat the city as a collection of neighborhoods, but as a strategic asset. Certain areas mattered more than others. Some roads were more important than hundreds of smaller streets. Visibility, access, and movement became priorities. The goal was not comfort first, it was functionality at scale. By the time most people realized what was happening, the process was already underway. The city had crossed a point of no return. The question was no longer whether Addis Ababa would change, but how far it was willing to go to redefine itself. And that leads to the next question. Once the decision to restructure the city was made, what was the first move? The first move was simple in concept, but massive in execution. Control how the city moves. Addis Ababa's leaders understood that no city can modernize if its main arteries are broken. Traffic congestion, flooding, informal road use, and unreliable utilities were not just inconveniences. they were structural weaknesses. So instead of starting with buildings or housing, the focus went straight to the city's spine. That decision became the Urban Corridor Development Project. Rather than fixing scattered streets, the project targets Addis Ababa's most important roads, those running through financial districts, diplomatic zones, and commercial centers. These corridors are treated as systems, not surfaces. Everything beneath them is rebuilt first. Old water pipes are replaced. Electricity lines are reorganized. Drainage is redesigned to stop seasonal flooding that once shut down entire areas. Only after that does the road itself take shape. This approach explains why construction feels so aggressive. Roads are not partially closed, they are erased. Entire blocks are cleared to allow for widening, straightening, and redesign. Sidewalks are no longer afterthoughts. They are built wide and continuous. Dedicated pedestrian paths appear where walking was once dangerous. Trees and green strips are added not for beauty alone, but to regulate heat and improve urban livability. What makes these corridors different is intent. They are not neutral infrastructure. They are investment signals. These are the routes diplomats take from the airport, the roads investors use to reach offices and hotels, the avenues that define first impressions. Along them, the city encourages banks, hotels, offices, and commercial towers to cluster. Order creates confidence. Confidence attracts capital. This is why buildings along these corridors look different. They are taller, cleaner, and more uniform. Zoning is enforced more strictly. Informal activity is pushed out. The city is deliberately shaping what is seen and what is not. For residents, this feels abrupt. Familiar shortcuts vanish. Entire neighborhoods are cut through by new roads. The logic is not explained street by street because it isn't designed locally. It is designed strategically. Addis Ababa is being optimized for the flow of people, goods, money, and power. Once the corridors began to take shape, something else followed naturally. Roads alone could not carry the image the city wanted to project. Infrastructure needed landmarks, projects that could define identity, not just movement. Places that said something about ambition, history, and global relevance. And that raises the next question. Once the city's spine was secured, what was built along it to redefine Addis Ababa's image? The answer was symbolism, carefully placed in concrete and glass. Once the corridors began to function, Addis Ababa started building what would be seen along them. These were not ordinary developments meant only to solve housing shortages or office demand. They were landmarks, chosen to reshape how the city is perceived by anyone passing through it. La Gare was one of the clearest signals. What had once been a historic railway zone was transformed into a $1.5 billion mixed-use development backed by the United Arab Emirates. The location mattered. Sitting along key routes, La Gare was designed to be unavoidable, with residences, retail, offices, and cultural spaces combined into a single district that felt global by design. The message was unmistakable. Addis Ababa could attract, absorb, and manage large foreign capital. Meskel Square followed a different logic. It had always been symbolic, a place of protest, faith, and national gatherings. Instead of removing that symbolism, the city re-engineered it. Underground parking, commercial facilities, and redesigned public space allowed the square to function economically while still hosting mass events. Power was not erased, it was organized. Then came vertical ambition. Projects like Mesab Tower began to push Addis Ababa's skyline upward, breaking from the city's traditionally low-rise profile. Height was not just about density, it was about confidence. High-rises announced permanence, capital concentration, and future orientation. They signal that a city expects to be here and relevant for decades. Unity Park added another layer. By opening the National Palace grounds to the public, Ethiopia wasn't simply offering recreation, it was curating history. Culture, governance, and tourism were merged into one controlled space. Visitors experience heritage, but within a narrative chosen by the state. This is soft power built into urban design. What connects all these projects is placement. They sit where diplomats pass, where investors look, where cameras turn. Addis Ababa is being framed deliberately. The city is not leaving interpretation to chance, it is managing visibility. This approach changes how the city functions socially as well. Land values along these corridors rise sharply. Informal businesses are pushed out. Commercial activity becomes formal, regulated, and taxable. The city becomes easier to read, but harder to access for those without capital. At this stage, Addis Ababa begins to feel like two cities overlapping. One is fast, polished, and outward-facing. The other is dense, informal, and under pressure. The tension between them grows quietly beneath the surface. And behind all this symbolism lies a harder question. Landmark projects do not exist in isolation. They require money, energy, transport, and constant maintenance. So the next question becomes unavoidable. What larger system is keeping this entire transformation moving without collapsing under its own weight? Let's pause for a second to say, big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. That system is not a single project, but a tightly connected machine built around infrastructure, energy, and connectivity. Addis Ababa's transformation only makes sense when you zoom out and see how the city is plugged into Ethiopia's wider national strategy. The corridors, towers, and landmarks would collapse into dysfunction without this deeper foundation. Start with transport. Addis Ababa is no longer designed to serve only its residents. It is designed to move goods, people, and influence across borders. The Addis Ababa-Djibouti Railway changed the city's economic geography by giving landlocked Ethiopia a reliable, fast route to the sea. That rail line doesn't just move exports, it anchors Addis Ababa as the command center of that flow. Logistics, finance, and decision-making concentrate where transport converges. Aviation multiplies this effect. Ethiopian Airlines has quietly become Africa's most powerful carrier, and Addis Ababa its nerve center. This is why the planned $7.8 billion Abusera International Airport matters so much. It is not an airport for today's traffic. It is built for dominance decades ahead. More cargo capacity means more trade. More passenger capacity means more conferences, diplomacy, tourism, and capital circulation. Cities that control air routes control relevance. Then there is energy, the most invisible but decisive element. None of this urban ambition survives without reliable power. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, approaching full operational capacity around 2025, changes the equation entirely. It gives Ethiopia domestic control over electricity at scale. High-rises, rail systems, digital infrastructure, and industrial zones all depend on it. Addis Ababa's skyline is rising because the grid beneath it is finally strong enough to support it. This is why Ethiopia's construction boom, estimated at around $67 billion, has not slowed despite its scale. Construction is no longer treated as a short-term stimulus. It is treated as a structural investment. Jobs are created, skills circulate. Capital is absorbed domestically rather than leaking out. From the outside, it can look reckless. Too fast, too big, too ambitious. But from inside the strategy, it is tightly sequenced. Transport enables trade, energy enables industry, industry sustains cities. Addis Ababa sits at the center of that loop. Yet systems like this have a blind spot. They are designed for efficiency, not equity. They optimize movement, capital, and visibility. They do not automatically protect social cohesion. When infrastructure moves faster than inclusion, pressure builds where spreadsheets don't look. The machine is working. The city is functioning. The ambition is alive. But the cost is starting to surface, not in balance sheets, but in lives disrupted and communities displaced. Which brings us to the uncomfortable question that follows every mega-project-driven transformation. Who is being pushed aside to keep this system running smoothly? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video, and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. The answer is ordinary residents, quietly, unevenly, and often without real choice. To keep Addis Ababa's transformation moving at full speed, space has to be cleared. Corridors need width, landmarks need visibility, high-rises need foundations, and in a dense city, that space almost always comes from people who already live there. Entire neighborhoods have been demolished to make way for new roads and developments. Homes built over decades vanish in weeks. Families are relocated to the city's outskirts, far from workplaces, schools, markets, and social networks that once made survival possible. Compensation exists, but it rarely replaces what was lost. Money runs out faster than the community. This hit especially hard because Addis Ababa was already under strain before the transformation began. An estimated 80% of residents live in substandard housing, often in informal or semi-formal settlements. These communities were never fully protected by strong property rights, which makes them easy targets when land suddenly becomes valuable. Modernization doesn't push everyone equally. It pushes hardest where resistance is weakest. As the new Addis Ababa takes shape, a sharp contrast emerges. Along the corridors, the city is clean, organized, and expensive. Glass towers, hotels, offices, and formal businesses dominate the landscape. Away from them, life becomes more compressed. Informal trade is pushed further out. Commutes grow longer. Daily survival becomes more costly in time and money. This is where the criticism grows louder. Urban planners, researchers, and civil society groups argue that the transformation is top-down, designed to satisfy investors and global optics first, and residents second. They warn that a city built too quickly around elite consumption risks social fracture. A capital can look modern and still be deeply unequal. There is also a quieter tension. Many residents understand the need for change. They want better roads, reliable electricity, and opportunity. But they question why the benefits feel distant while the disruption is immediate. Progress becomes something they watch rather than experience. The danger is not just inequality, it is alienation. When people feel the city is no longer being built for them, trust erodes. Cities don't collapse only from poverty, they collapse from exclusion. Addis Ababa is now at this delicate point. The transformation has momentum. Reversing it is impossible. Slowing it is unlikely. The only real choice left is how to shape what comes next. Which brings the story to its most important question. Can Addis Ababa correct its course before ambition permanently outruns inclusion? The answer is yes, but only if the city changes how it builds, not whether it builds. Addis Ababa still has time to correct its course because the transformation is unfinished. Corridors are still expanding. Housing policy is still evolving. New districts are still being planned. The future of the city is not locked in concrete yet. It is being negotiated project by project. Correction does not mean stopping ambition. Addis Ababa cannot afford that. The city must modernize to function as Ethiopia's economic engine and Africa's diplomatic capital. But modernization that only prioritizes speed, visibility, and foreign capital eventually undermines itself. Cities remain stable when people feel included in progress, not displaced by it. The shift required is not abstract. It is practical. Affordable housing must scale at the same pace as luxury developments. Relocation must keep people connected to jobs and services, not push them to the margins. Communities must be consulted before demolition, not informed after decisions are finalized. Infrastructure must serve daily life, not just global optics. There are signs this conversation has begun. Urban resilience programs, housing discussions, and policy debates increasingly acknowledge that displacement and inequality are risks, not side effects. International partners, including development institutions, now emphasize inclusion alongside infrastructure. The pressure to adjust is real and growing. What Addis Ababa is attempting is something few African cities have tried at this scale: a rapid leap into global city status without passing through decades of slow industrialization. That leap comes with risks, but it also offers lessons. If Addis Ababa manages to combine ambition with fairness, it could become a model for African urban development, showing that modernization does not have to erase communities to succeed. If it fails, the city will still look impressive. The roads will be wide, the towers will shine. But underneath, tension will remain, waiting for moments of economic stress or political shock to surface. Right now, Addis Ababa exists between these outcomes. The cranes are still moving. The plans are still being adjusted. The story is still being written. What makes this moment decisive is not the infrastructure already built, but the choices still ahead. Cities are remembered not only for what they constructed, but for whom they chose to carry forward with them. So, as Addis Ababa races toward its future, one final question remains unanswered, and it will define everything that follows. Will this new Addis Ababa become a city that rises with its people? Let us know in the comment section. Will it become a city that leaves too many behind while reaching for the world? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.